Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We are broadcasting from the Thacker Jewelry Studios. View loose diamonds, custom design, and more at thackerjewelry.com. We've got Councilman Steve Massengale on the show and live in person. First time in a little while that you've done that. But,
yes, good morning.
It's nice to see you. And it makes life a little easier to talk during the breaks. So, but how was the council meeting yesterday?
Council meeting was good. First off, let me say, Matt, it's great to be in studio with you. And in full disclosure, let's tell everybody that we are still socially distanced within the studio this morning.
We are. We've got some distance.
And
but it is good to be back in the studio. And
I'm also
we had a great council meeting last night. We took care of several issues, and we approved the construction of the parking garage that's adjacent to Citizens Tower. We heard presentations from the SEAC on what really is the next step in our process with impact fees. So those were probably the highlights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, you were saying something. I was going to...
Oh, well, I was just saying, hey, me too. Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning, Dave. Sorry I didn't have my headphones on.
I'm socially distancing from home. Obviously, you have your headphones on now. Yeah, a lot to talk about. So I understood you to say that are you guys not completed with Citizens Tower yet?
Well, I would consider Citizens Tower 99.9% complete. I mean, we're down to the point of
paintings on the wall,
punch lists like a nick in the wall that has to be painted or a piece of trim that's not finished. But this is adjacent. The parking garage is adjacent to Citizens Tower, but is a separate project.
So
I have driven by it a couple of times, even driven by it at night. I've kind of made a point to go by now, and I have not been able to go inside. Nobody will take me on a tour. But from what I look, when I look inside,
that's because you haven't asked, Dave.
I'll take you on a tour tomorrow if you want.
Okay.
I'm telling you, because Latrell Joy told him the same thing.
I was listening when Latrell did tell him, so the offer has been out there, I'll say.
You got me there.
But I give tours all the time, so if we want to set up a time, we'll go look at it. It's a neat facility.
It looks like it from the outside. It is absolutely beautiful.
No. So as far as this new parking garage, now I'm trying. I read through the article that Lubbock Online had, which is the AJ and whatnot about the parking garage. But I think they're saying it's $6.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
But the money has already been approved. But they said, was it part of the public safety project or was it part of the Citizens Tower project?
A little of both. And,
okay.
And first of all, this is something we talked about probably 2 years ago. This has always been in the plan. I guess we ought to back up a couple of steps so that everybody understands. The original tower project included rehabbing the existing parking structure that was part of that bank, and I think the price tag on that was $12 or $13 million. When we started looking at it, it didn't make sense to spend that kind of money on a structure that old, and so
those falling off apart.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we were in the early stages of that project. We had one of the contractors had a truck up in that garage, and its wheel fell through one of the floors, so it was not sound construction. So we tore that down, and we always knew that we needed a parking garage. Now, after we finalized the budget for Citizens Tower, we couldn't get to a place where we thought we could afford the parking garage. But here's what occurred is in the public safety improvements project, which again is police headquarters, substations, municipal court, and the police warehouse that's being built out on Municipal Hill, we came in significantly under budget on A&E, architectural engineering on those projects. So there were some savings there.
Now, does that have to do with the three buildings being exactly the same for the police stations, the substations?
Well, those dollars were just part of the design process. Mm-hmm. And then we found savings when we had citizens donate the land for two of the substations. Mm-hmm. And so that found some money. Then we sold City Hall. That found us some money. And so when we were able to put the pieces between what was left from the parking, add the parking allocation from Citizens Tower, you put it in a bundle, and we've ended up with what we think will be a nice public parking structure downtown.
So let's see. City Hall was sold to South Plains College,
That's
right?
correct.
Is there any ETA on when they're going to move in and start having classes?
I haven't talked to Dr. Satterwhite in a while, but I know that they're in the middle of doing their engineering.
Mm-hmm.
They own the building today,
Right.
and so that's a date I need to figure out. I would think it's sometime in 2021, but soon they'll start construction on that project.
Okay. So now I guess it's saying that the city needs about 578 total parking spaces. Did this cover a good chunk of those?
Yes, the parking garage has about 400 some odd spaces in it.
And there's still some around the buildings and whatnot.
Yeah, we still have a couple of lots, and that'll give us the ability. There's a lot to the west. That's I'm not sure what the final decision, but that could likely be parking for municipal court. And the lot to the east has got ADA parking in it, and that could be customer parking. And then everything else will be in the parking tower. And so if you've been over there, you've seen where we've closed 14th, and there's a plaza in front of Citizens Tower. So if you happen to park in the parking garage, you're not walking across a street when you come into the building.
So 14th is gone completely there.
Yeah,
It won't open back
right
up.
now it's got a plaza in front of the tower, and then when we finish municipal court, the plaza will extend, so 14th will go away right there.
Okay, what about the one-way streets? I know that there was talk about getting rid of the one-way streets. Are they going to be gone?
Yeah, that's still in the plan. That's in the budget we just approved. And so you got Avenue L and Avenue K. Those will go back to two-way, and then really the dollars associated with making those streets bi-directional again are the dollars associated with the stoplight. I mean the turn signals and things.
Okay, yeah. And so do you know when there's going to be a vote on that, or when that's going to happen, or is that?
So it's
still
already
in the
approved
air?
in
It's been approved?
the budget we just approved. So I'm
Okay.
not sure when that capital project will occur, but within
Soon.
the next the
Soon.
next 12 months.
Okay, and so what else did the city do? You said impact fees were one of the big topics that came up, and I know that on our show we've talked a lot about impact fees, but I do have to, unfortunately, I've got to take a quick break. It's 7:16, but we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit about impact fees and what Lubbock saw yesterday. You said there was a presentation yesterday on possibilities of how that could work moving forward.
That's correct. We'll do that after the break.
All right, sounds good. We'll be right back. I'm sitting here with the Councilman Steve Massengale. We've also got Dave King on the phone listening in, and we're about to talk a little bit about impact fees, and I made him tell me everything during the break, so he's going to have to say it twice. But
That's fine.
so tell us a little bit about what the presentation was about yesterday.
So what we heard was the next step in our process to consider impact fees, and that was the presentation from our SEAC committee. We've gone through many phases of this, and we've looked at possibilities of what those fees might look like. But this citizens group, who, by the way, I'm grateful for their work and their service to the city, 23 meetings that have taken out of their day to work on this and come to the point and make a final recommendation. I don't know if you've ever served on any civic groups, but 23 meetings.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And they reported perfect attendance of this group. So anyway,
That's pretty impressive.
it really is, and they've done a great job despite all the adversity that's surrounded this process. But what we heard was the presentation that'll start the policy discussion with the council, and some of the highlights of that are this. They recommended a 25% discount for homes 2,000 square feet or under. A 50% discount on multifamily.
So can I ask you something about that? Now, I don't know that it makes a difference, but doing it by square feet doesn't necessarily go with the value of a home, because you could build it in certain places. It may be a $250,000, $300,000 home, but if you do it in another place, it may be a $150,000 home. And at the same time, it could be the amenities that you put in. So wouldn't it be better to go by a value versus going by the square footage of a house?
I think you make a good point, and some of the council members asked similar questions last night. So I think that'll be one thing we discuss. Again, none of this, the council won't take any of this for granted, nor will they rubber stamp this. And so, again, just a recommendation to start the conversation. 50% discount on non-residential properties, which would be commercial. Water and sewer rates recommended to be set at 0 to begin this process. There's a grace period on some things. There's a 6-month window from adoption rate until the effective date of the ordinance. 6-month window between adoption date of change to the effective date of that change. And then it's also got some recommendations in there that any time that the SEAC will continue to meet, and any changes that are associated with impact fees will still go through the citizens group before it comes to council.
So they can make recommendations?
Well, I think it's just so they can continue to make recommendations. And remember, impact fees are dictated by state law. It's something created by the state legislature. There's several communities in Texas that have them, and there's a process by which we have to handle everything. There's also, it tells us the members on the committee, they have to represent certain industries to be on that committee.
Yeah. So one thing that I think a lot of people are worried about, and I don't know that we know exactly what happens now, but has there been any studies done on other cities that have used impact fees on appraisal creep? In other words, in Lubbock, if all of these new houses are going to be more expensive because of impact fees, even if it's a small amount, is that going to bleed over to those who've already bought their house and or are buying previously built houses that don't necessarily have to pay the impact fees?
Taxes. I haven't seen a study like that, but I'm sure at some point there is some adjustment in the market when you implement impact fees.
Yeah. So, and another thing, you were talking about that sewage and water was going to be put at 0, and you were explaining why. Can you explain that to the audience, why they're put at 0 instead of being left out completely?
So, water and sewer are being recommended to be set at 0, although there have been some arguments to keep water and sewer out. Remember, water and sewer is not a tax-based operation. So your taxes do not go to support water and sewer. Those are fee-based. And so as we build infrastructure, it comes out of each of those systems. And so if there needs to be more capital dollars, that raises the user rate. So right now, that we're at a point where we're maintaining, but as we continue to grow, we'll need to have a mechanism to fund that infrastructure. If we leave water and sewer out, we have to go through this whole process again if we decide to ever put it in.
Yeah. So is water and sewer, is storm drains and storm fees part of that water and sewer? Because I know that's one of the more expensive taxes for businesses.
Yeah,
right
water and sewer would be separate from stormwater, but they're all fee-based.
Yeah. So as far as the impact fees concerned, is this something that the city, is this something that you think is going to happen with the city?
I feel like we're on a path to adopt impact fees. I couldn't tell you what they look like at this point. Okay.
So how much is left to get to the point where there's a vote at the city council over them?
Well, that's a good question. We have a hearing on October 6th, whatever our October meeting is. And at that point, we could decide if we close that hearing, then we have 30 days to act. And then if we have the option to, we could leave that hearing open to another meeting to do some background work before we close that meeting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to take another quick break. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. If you have a question about anything that we've talked about so far, feel free to text us at 806-680-2790. Or if you have a question for Councilman Massengale, we'll be happy to take those questions. If I don't like it, I may not ask it, but we'll be happy to take it anyway. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We'll be right back. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We got a question from 476 for our guest, City Council member Steve Massengale. See, how will impact fees How will impact fees affect current residents surrounding new developed areas, and will there be any cost to existing residents?
Yeah, it's a good question. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but you also, I want you to talk about the positives as well, because there are positives to this, because it's going to put money into certain areas, into those residents that maybe wouldn't have been there before.
Well, it could have the opposite effect of your question earlier. To the value of their home. First of all, it won't cost that homeowner anything. Right. They'll see no increase. Mm-hmm. It will not. I hate to use the word impact them, but impact fees are only assessed on new homes.
Right, and it goes to the builder.
That's right.
The builder then puts the cost on to the buyer of the house.
And the builder decides if that's a pass-through, or the builder decides if he's going to pack profit margin on that and pass it through, and then the consumer can decide, maybe I'm getting the same thing in this development when I'm looking at this one, and I'll choose to go with this one because I feel like there's a better value there. So existing homeowners will not ever see impact fees. Now,
yeah, but Steve.
Yes, sir.
Impact fees are going to, in effect, raise the price of all homes in Lubbock.
Yeah, but that have the other effect. That means it would raise the price of yours. When you sell it, you'll make more money.
Yeah, and that's a good thing for those of us who have a home. It's not such a good thing for people who are just getting started and have not bought their first home yet.
Now, I will say that is why they're saying that they want smaller houses to not be affected by impact fees, so that new home buyers that are buying a starting home aren't going to be affected by it. But it could still affect appraisals.
It could. You don't know, and that's why you also have the mechanism built into this thing to go back and adjust it. Mm-hmm. And so
I guess my question, Steve, is we've been doing it another way since day one. Why all of a sudden is there a need to change this?
Because I still use 114th as one of the great examples. Is you managed to develop all around 114th from University to Slide, and you've got a road that was not there's no way to fund building out that road because of the way the current development standards are designed. So you need to build out roads like that as you build the developments around it. Impact fees address that. That's just one example, but you could also look at University, Indiana headed south. I mean, those are terrible roads. And that's because we've got to scramble to figure out how to fund the construction of those roads.
We have a texter this morning that says, now this is from a texter, does Councilman understand that overtaxation causes flight of tax base? Does it seem the city is chasing Austin dreams with Austin results?
Yeah, we're not. This is not about trying to be like Austin.
I don't think you want to be Austin right now.
I think when you sit in our seats, you understand that you've got to be able to keep up with the infrastructure. And this is a model, again, it's created by the state legislature, but many cities in Texas have employed this, and it's working in those faster growth communities.
So as far as, we kind of talked about, I think, this during the break, but one of the upsides is also that the state of Texas has put into place that if appraisal creeps, for example, if this actually does make appraisals go up 10% across the board and your taxes go up 10% at the same time, then the citizens would actually have the right to vote at that point on the tax rate.
Yeah, what Matt's referring to is the property tax control as it applies to our budgets right now. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's no evidence that you would have appraisal creep. You'll probably have some adjustment in the market, and I would say your example of 10% is probably aggressive.
No, yeah, it is a little bit.
But there are mechanisms to adjust it, and
I use the term 10% because that's the maximum if you have.
That's your maximum adjustment you can have on an annual basis on your appraisal.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I use that as an example. It's not an actual number, but But if it did, you would have a mechanism to say, hey, that's too much, and then it would have to go to the voters at that point.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, so, but as I've said, I've talked to you about it over the break, and I know that you understand. My complete problem with it is that it seems to be a raise in taxes on a specific people or group of people, or even across the whole city in the long run. But it's almost like it's hidden. And I know that we get to talk about it and everything, but once it's passed and once it's done, then it's another way for the city to get revenue. But it's not necessarily a tax; it's a fee. It's almost like a hidden tax.
Right. So it begs the discussion of if you build a development and the collectors and the infrastructure for that has to be funded, should everyone fund that, or should the construction or the development in that area fund that? And so this is a discussion about that development funding it, so that you don't fund it in your tax bill.
Now I want to say this: don't feel sorry for those developers, because they're the ones that brought this up as a way to fund it. And so I want to make that very clear. The developers brought this up, and then I found it very funny that when the first kind of round came out, they said, wait a second, you can't do impact fees here. You can't do it on water. You can't do it on sewer, but you can do it here. I mean, they wanted to dictate exactly where it went and how it was done, and they're going to end up shooting themselves in the foot, because in the end, they're going to have to pay all this, and they're the ones that brought it up. So I don't feel sorry for the developers.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Councilman, we have a slew of people who have texted in this morning. We have somehow hit a nerve on this particular topic. We have someone that said maybe the city should stop annexing areas without the funds to build out roads and water and sewer services. And another says we had to pay for the road to be paved in front of our property.
Yeah, so I'd have to know the specific example of them paving that road. It may have been an annexed property, but remember, we don't have the ability involuntarily annex anymore. So any annexations are voluntary, which means Dave comes to the city and he owns a section of land, a square mile, and he wants to build Dave's Kingdom, and he says, "City, I would like for you to annex at me. I would like to." For you to collect the fees to provide services. And so that's the only situation in which we annex from this point forward for Dave's Kingdom.
All right, we do have to take another break. And like I said, I know that this is something we're talking about, but we've got other things to talk about as well. So News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO, mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. And I had a question that I said I was going to ask during the break and might not bring up, but I think that the answer was very important. And that is, if you take fees in a certain area, does this just go to the general fund? Can the city use it as wanted, or is there a specific way that the city has to use these funds?
That's another great question, Matt. So the city map is divided into service areas, and I've showed Matt the service areas. Mm-hmm. And so there's there's service areas A through H, and whatever fee is collected in each respective service area, that fee has to stay in that service area. You cannot move dollars around to spend in other service areas. So this is not a slush type fund. A couple other things that are important is there's a time limit. The city cannot hold those funds for more than 10 years, and if they don't get expended on a project, they get returned. There's other parts to this. I told Matt at the break, the thing I dislike most about this whole process is how complex it is. As soon as the city takes a dollar, it's obligated to a project. So keep in mind, the city's still on the hook on this deal. It doesn't take the city off the hook. It's just a mechanism for which the city can keep up with infrastructure better. Yeah.
So I know that this is a topic that we don't really, you don't really want to go into too much, but the sanctuary city for the unborn, what is the city doing at this time when it comes to that? I know that both our senator and our two representatives have brought this up to the city. So what's the city doing at this time?
So it's a great question, Matt, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to talk about it. First, since I've got the opportunity, I just want to communicate that I'm pro-life. This is where I sit on this, and I've been on the record on that before, except of cases of incest, rape, or medical emergency for the mother's life. The council has retained outside counsel because I believe there were concerns about us having in-house counsel study this ordinance. In-house counsel works for us, obviously, and so there's been a firm hired, a municipal law firm out of Houston named Olson & Olson. I've also seen comments about why do we always go out. We actually handle most of our legal work inside. We have a really good legal team, but that's being we haven't seen anything back from that firm yet, but we hope to see some information back. I think what we'll see from them is they'll discuss the constitutionality of the proposed ordinance as well as the enforceability of a proposed ordinance. So I want to bring up another thing that was high news over the weekend, and that was that a director or a board member of Planned Parenthood, or it was alleged on social media that a director or it's a board member or something of Planned Parenthood works for this law firm, and that is not true. Okay, I just
They do have a family member, though.
Well, I think it's a distant relative for another firm of which they're not connected. So it's really a stretch to connect it.
So what made you choose Olson & Olson? Was there a specific reason they were chosen?
That firm was chosen by our city attorney.
Okay. I was just wondering if they've worked with cities on this in the past, if they had some type of connection that made us choose them over all the other law firms in the United States or in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, man.
Okay.
And it is. This is serious. The council's taking this seriously, and I think that's why I tell you, I'll talk briefly about it. I don't want to get ahead of the council and their opportunity. We have not been able to discuss this as a group yet. So, I think once we get to that point, we get the information that we need on the legality of a proposed ordinance, then I think you'll see the council discuss it.
All right. Well, we have to take another quick break. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO. All right, this is Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. Now, I've got Councilman Massengale. I know this is your last segment here, and there's only a few minutes there. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up? We do have some text messages, but I want to give you the floor before we leave in case there's something that you wanted to talk about or bring up.
I don't have anything else on my mind. It's an I guess I would remind everybody that it is election season. Our local elections got moved from May to the general election in November. There's 3 of us on the council that have opponents. And so the ballot's going to be long.
It's going to be really long now.
And so
and you can't just hit Republican on it and walk away. You got to, first off, the city elections aren't Republican, Democrat, anything like that. You got to go down.
They're not partisan. And you're going to have school elections. You're going to have, and so you're going to have to spend some time in the ballot box this season.
Well, and then I also want to make sure what is it, October 4th? I'll double check that date, but I think October 4th is the last day that you can sign up to register to vote. And so in the state of Texas, so if you haven't registered to vote, your time is very limited. Get out and register to vote. It's a big deal this year, and just make sure you get out and do it. And
then the last thing I would say is if you haven't completed your census forms, to please do that. It's very important for our community that we all report in. There's so many things that affects that impact organizations all across our community. So please be sure and complete the census before the deadline. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Well, go ahead, Dave.
What do we have, about a minute?
We got about a minute.
Well, I'd just like to really quickly ask you a question because we don't have the time. But I've been driving around a lot just to get out of the house rather than sit in the quarantine. And I have seen some places here in Lubbock, inside the city limits, that simply I would not have believed that they exist. And I'm talking about some streets with potholes and housing conditions which are absolutely third world like. And I don't understand it, Steve. And I understand that we have zoning laws inside the city, tell me, how do those places exist?
Well, I guess I don't know what specific example you're talking about, but yes, we have streets always in need of repair, and there are neighborhoods that have really fallen in disrepair, and that, we have code enforcement, and they have a tremendous amount of work to do. I would say, Dave, that's why it's so important that we also worked a neighborhood planner into our most recent budget. It could help address some of those things you've identified.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I wish we had more time to talk about it, because there's one place in particular. It goes beyond just having some potholes in the street.
Send me a
It's
text.
absolutely third world.
Text it to me or
All
call
right.
me.
Councilman Massengale, thanks for coming on. I know that you had to spend a whole hour with me. Ooh.
That was a good hour.
It was. I thought everything went well. So thank you for coming on, and a lot of great information. And we'll see you again soon.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Matt.
All
Thanks,
right, thank
Dave.
you. All right, we'll be back on News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin.